That is your only coat. Nathaniel Cross spoke from the open car door, but Aisha Monroe did not turn around. Snow gathered along the shoulders of her dark blue wool coat as she stood beneath the weak light outside Harlem, 125th Street. It was 10:18 at night, and the temperature had fallen below 25 degrees. Commuters moved quickly toward buses and taxis, heads lowered against the wind, while an older woman sat near the station wall with both hands tucked beneath her arms. Her clothes were thin, her shoes damp, and her body trembled hard enough to make the paper cup beside her shake. Aisha stepped closer. "Please take this," she said. The woman looked up. "No, baby. You need it. I have somewhere warm to go." The words were not entirely true. Aisha still had nearly an hour of travel before reaching her apartment in the Bronx, and the gray cardigan beneath her coat was meant for indoor work, not a winter night. She unfastened the buttons anyway. Nathaniel watched from the rear seat of a black sedan parked across the street. The car heater pushed warm air around him. A second overcoat lay folded beside his briefcase, and a third remained in the trunk for emergencies. He had seen Aisha leave the Cross estate carrying a paper bag marked with the family crest. At first, he assumed Marianne Fields had given her leftover food. Then he remembered the household rule requiring all donated supplies to be logged. Aisha was the most careful employee in the house, yet she had left through the service entrance without signing anything out. Suspicion had followed him farther than reason. Now he watched her remove the only coat he had ever seen her wear. She placed it around the older woman's shoulders and pulled the collar closed beneath her chin. The coat was not expensive, but it had been repaired carefully along one sleeve and lined with faded blue fabric. Aisha's fingers rested against the stitching for one brief second before she let go. "My sister bought me this color once," the woman whispered. Aisha's expression changed, but she did not explain. "Then it belongs with you tonight." She opened the paper bag. Inside were 2 pairs of wool socks, travel-sized toiletries, packaged bread, fruit, and a transit card. Nathaniel leaned forward. None of the items came from his house. The socks still had discount store tags attached. The toiletries were sealed in pharmacy bags. A receipt showed Aisha had paid for everything herself less than an hour earlier. She handed the woman the transit card and $12 in folded bills. "The church kitchen is open until midnight," she said. "It is about 6 blocks south. You should keep the money. I get paid Friday." Nathaniel knew it was Tuesday. The woman tried to remove the coat, but Aisha held it closed gently. "Keep it until you are warm." "What about you?" Aisha smiled, though her teeth had already begun to chatter. "I walk fast." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "What is your name?" "Aisha." "I am Gloria." Aisha went still. The name seemed to strike somewhere deeper than recognition. She looked at the woman's face beneath the station light, studying the familiar curve of her cheek and the small scar near her eyebrow. "Aunt Gloria?" The older woman lowered her gaze. Aisha's breath caught. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Nathaniel opened the car door fully, but he did not step out. Aisha took Gloria's hands. "I have been looking for you." Gloria shook her head. "You should not have found me like this. I should have found you sooner." She lifted the paper bag and helped Gloria stand. Then, instead of walking toward the subway entrance or calling for help, Aisha led her south through the falling snow. Nathaniel watched them disappear past the station corner. He looked at the unused coat beside him, then at the receipt left visible through the open paper bag. "Follow them," he told the driver. The sedan moved forward slowly. Nathaniel had begun the night believing his maid might be taking something from his home. Within minutes, he understood that she had carried out nothing except what she had bought herself. The question was no longer what Aisha had taken. It was why a woman with almost nothing had just given away the one thing she could not replace. Aisha and Gloria walked south through the snow, while Nathaniel's sedan followed half a block behind, slow enough not to draw attention. The wind pushed loose powder across the sidewalk, and Aisha wrapped both arms around herself beneath the thin gray cardigan. Gloria noticed. "You should take the coat back," she said. "Not yet. You are freezing." "So were you." Gloria looked away, carrying the paper bag against her chest. The dark blue coat hung loosely from her shoulders, its repaired sleeve brushing the wet edge of the sidewalk. Aisha had worn that coat through 4 winters. Her mother had bought it during the final December they spent together, choosing the color because she said blue made Aisha look hopeful. Giving it away should have felt like losing her mother again. Instead, watching Gloria breathe more steadily made the sacrifice feel necessary. They reached a narrow church building between a laundromat and a closed pharmacy. Warm lights spilled through the basement windows, and a handwritten sign near the side entrance read "Evening Meal for Women, open until midnight." Aisha led Gloria inside. Nathaniel instructed his driver to park across the street. "Wait here," he said. "Sir, the temperature is dropping." Nathaniel looked at the extra overcoat beside him. "I noticed." He put it on and crossed the street alone. Inside the church basement, folding tables filled the room. Volunteers served soup from steel pots while women warmed their hands around paper cups. Aisha guided Gloria toward an empty chair, then moved behind the serving table as though she had done it many times before. She removed her cardigan, revealing the gray housekeeping uniform beneath, and tied on a plain white apron. "You work here too?" Gloria asked. "Twice a week." "After cleaning that house all day?" Aisha poured soup into a bowl. "People still need dinner after my shift ends." Nathaniel stopped near the stairwell, partly hidden behind a bulletin board covered with community notices. He had never seen Aisha move with such ease. At the estate, she spoke quietly, stepped aside for guests, and disappeared before meetings began. Here, women called her by name. She remembered who needed low-sodium soup, who preferred tea, and who had an appointment at the community clinic in the morning. The paper bag from the estate sat open on a table. Its contents were divided into smaller bundles, each labeled in Aisha's handwriting. Socks, toothpaste, transit cards, hand warmers. Nothing had been taken from Nathaniel's home. The family crest appeared only because Aisha had reused a discarded shopping bag from the pantry. The realization embarrassed him more than he expected. Gloria ate slowly while Aisha sat beside her. "Tessa thinks you are staying with a friend," Aisha said. Gloria's spoon stopped. "Do not tell her. She is 17. She knows something is wrong. She needs to finish school, not worry about me. I have been sending her money." Gloria looked up sharply. "You cannot afford that." "She cannot afford to quit." The room seemed to narrow around Nathaniel. He knew Aisha's wages. He knew the train fare from the Bronx, the hours she worked, and the fact that she had never requested in advance. He had not known she was supporting a teenager, buying supplies for strangers, and volunteering after midnight. "Why did the shelter turn you away?" Aisha asked. Gloria glanced toward the far wall, where a woman in a red scarf was writing names in a notebook. "They said I arrived too late." The city referral line said beds were available. Beds were available for people who could pay the holding fee. Aisha's expression changed. "What holding fee?" Gloria lowered her voice. $25. Cash only. "That is not legal. It is called a donation." Aisha looked toward the red-scarfed woman, who quietly lifted the notebook. Nathaniel followed her gaze. On the cover was the name Eleanor Cross Women's Shelter. His mother's name. His family's foundation funded it. Every quarterly report claimed no woman had been denied shelter during severe weather. Aisha stood and crossed the room. The woman opened the notebook. 19 names filled the pages, each beside a date, a reason for refusal, and an amount requested. Nathaniel felt the cold from outside settle somewhere deeper. He had followed Aisha because he doubted her honesty. Now, standing beneath a church basement light, he was looking at a list that questioned the honesty of an institution carrying his family name. Aisha read the 19 names twice, then looked toward Gloria. "How long has this been happening?" Gloria folded both hands around the soup bowl. "At least 6 weeks." The woman in the red scarf introduced herself as Marlene Davis, a volunteer who had started recording every refusal after 3 women arrived at the church during the same freezing rainstorm. "Some were told they came too late," Marlene said. "Some did not have identification. Others were asked for cash to hold a bed until intake finished." Aisha turned the notebook toward the light. The entries were careful, each one marked with a date, time, requested amount, and the name of the staff member who answered the shelter door. Nathaniel remained near the stairwell, unable to look away from the name printed across the cover. Eleanor Cross Women's Shelter had been created after his mother died. He approved its annual funding, signed the donor letters, and accepted reports praising its emergency access policy. The reports used words like dignity, safety, and unconditional support. None mentioned $25 payments. None mentioned women being left outside. Did anyone complain to the foundation? Aisha asked. Marlene nodded. 3 times. We received polite replies saying the shelter followed all city guidelines. Who signed them? Vanessa Cole. Nathaniel knew the name immediately. Vanessa was the shelter's executive director, a woman praised at every fundraising dinner for expanding capacity without increasing costs. He had trusted her numbers because they looked efficient. Aisha touched the page beside Gloria's name. You were turned away tonight? At 8:40, Gloria said. They said the last bed required a donation. And when you could not pay? They told me the church might have chairs. Aisha closed her eyes briefly. The coat around Gloria's shoulders had begun to dry, but melted snow still darkened the hem. You should have called me. I did not want you risking your apartment. You are not a risk. Gloria looked at her with the tired tenderness of someone who had spent years protecting others from her own hardship. The lease says 1 occupant. If they find me there, you could lose the room. Then we find another answer. You already give too much. Aisha's voice softened. You raised me after my mother died. You worked 2 jobs so I could finish school. You gave me everything when you had almost nothing. Nathaniel heard the sentence and understood the coat differently. It was not impulsive generosity. It was a debt of love Aisha had never considered a burden. Marlene lifted another folder from beneath the table. Inside were copies of handwritten receipts marked voluntary contribution. Several carried the shelter stamp. We have 7 of these, she said. The amounts are different. $10, $20, $35. Aisha examined the signatures. These need to be copied and stored somewhere safe. I have photographs, Marlene replied. The originals belong to the women. Nathaniel took 1 step forward without meaning to. The floorboard creaked. Aisha turned. Her eyes found him immediately beneath the stairwell light. The surprise on her face disappeared almost at once, replaced by something colder. Mr. Cross. Every nearby conversation quieted. Nathaniel stepped fully into the room. Snow melted along the shoulders of his overcoat. Aisha looked toward the basement entrance, then toward the paper bag bearing the cross crest. She understood why he was there before he spoke. You followed me. It was not a question. Nathaniel did not insult her with a lie. Yes. Gloria looked between them. Who is he? My employer, Aisha said. Her voice remained controlled, but the injury beneath it was unmistakable. Did you follow me because you thought I was stealing? Nathaniel looked at the reused bag, the discount receipts, and the supplies she had purchased with her own money. At first, I questioned why you left the estate with that bag. Aisha's expression tightened. You could have asked. I should have. Instead, you watched me. Yes. The honesty did not repair the insult, but it prevented another one. Aisha closed the notebook and placed one hand over it. These women trusted us with their names. You do not get to take this because your family name is on the shelter. Nathaniel stopped several feet away. I am not asking to take it. Then why are you here? He looked at Gloria wearing the blue coat, at the receipts, and at the 19 names written beneath his mother's name. Because I doubted the wrong person. Aisha held his gaze. That does not tell me what you will do next. Nathaniel glanced toward the church windows, where snow continued falling over a city that believed the shelter doors were open. First, I listen. Nathaniel removed his gloves and placed them on the nearest folding chair, a small gesture meant to show that he was not preparing to leave. Aisha remained beside the table with one hand resting on Gloria's notebook. She did not invite him closer. He understood that listening required more than silence. It required surrendering the right to control what came next. Marlene pulled out a chair near the end of the table. Sit there, she said. Nathaniel obeyed. Around him, the church basement continued its work. Volunteers refilled soup bowls, women warmed their hands around paper cups, and snow tapped against the narrow windows. No one treated his presence as more urgent than the needs already in the room. Aisha returned to Gloria's side. Tell him what happened tonight, she said. Gloria looked toward Nathaniel. I arrived before 9. The shelter worker said a bed was available, but only if I made a contribution. Did she say the amount was required? Nathaniel asked. She said donations kept beds from being released. How much? $25. Gloria touched the coat collar beneath her chin. I had 9. Marlene opened the notebook to another page. 6 women reported similar language. Different amounts. Same message. Nathaniel read without reaching for the book. One woman had been asked for $15. Another had been told to return with identification despite the shelter's published emergency policy allowing intake without documents during severe weather. A third had arrived with a child and been redirected because the family rooms were supposedly reserved, though the Foundation report listed available capacity that night. Who receives the quarterly reports? Aisha asked. I do, Nathaniel said. And the Foundation board? Do you read the individual intake data? No. I receive summaries. Then the summaries are protecting someone. The statement was direct, but not careless. Nathaniel accepted it. What do you need tonight? He asked Gloria. She looked at Aisha before answering. A warm place. Privacy. No cameras. No speech about gratitude. Nathaniel reached for his phone, then stopped. May I arrange a hotel room? Gloria considered the question. Only if I choose the hotel and nothing is charged to Aisha. Agreed. And I do not sign anything that gives your foundation permission to use my name. Agreed. Aisha watched him carefully. The man who usually made arrangements with a sentence was waiting for permission from a woman who owned nothing but the coat around her shoulders. Nathaniel contacted a small hotel 3 blocks away that partnered with a local clinic. He booked one room for 2 nights under Gloria's chosen name and requested no publicity, no foundation branding, and no staff contact beyond normal check-in. Dr. Rachel Kim, the clinic social worker, arrived 20 minutes later to assess Gloria's condition and discuss longer-term options. Nathaniel stayed seated while the women spoke. He did not interrupt when Gloria rejected one shelter across town because it separated residents from their belongings. He did not argue when she asked for a studio housing application rather than transitional group housing. Choice, he realized, sounded inefficient only to people accustomed to deciding for others. Near midnight, the basement door opened and Vanessa Cole entered wearing a camel-colored coat, her expression arranged into professional concern. Mr. Cross, she said, looking past everyone else. I was told there may be confusion regarding tonight's intake. Aisha's hand tightened on the notebook. Vanessa noticed Gloria wearing the blue coat and smiled without warmth. This woman arrived after our standard admission period. Marlene turned a page. At 8:40. Our final intake depends on staffing. Nathaniel remained seated. Did your staff request $25 from her? Vanessa's smile faded. We encourage voluntary donations when residents are able. Gloria looked directly at her. You told me the bed would not be held without it. Vanessa adjusted her gloves. That is not our policy. Aisha pushed the notebook across the table, stopping it within Vanessa's view. 19 names waited beneath the church light. Then explain why 19 women heard the same thing. Vanessa did not touch the pages. Unverified complaints should not determine funding decisions. Nathaniel looked at the shelter director, then at the women her reports had erased. No, he said, but they determine whether the next payment leaves my foundation tomorrow. Vanessa froze. Nathaniel's voice remained calm. The disbursement is suspended pending an independent audit. Every denial, fee, intake record, and weather night report will be reviewed. You cannot disrupt shelter operations during a storm. Then operations continue under emergency oversight. He turned to Aisha. What should happen first? Vanessa stared at him, but he no longer looked toward her for authority. Aisha opened the notebook to the first name. Call every woman who was turned away tonight, she said. Find them beds before anyone discusses reputation. The church basement changed within minutes. Marlene divided the 19 names into 3 groups. Women refused that evening, women whose locations were known, and women who had not been seen since the previous night. Dr. Rachel Kim contacted outreach teams and nearby clinics. Nathaniel called the hotel manager again and secured 8 additional rooms under an emergency community rate, but he did not assign them himself. Each woman would be asked whether she wanted a private room, a different shelter, transportation to family, or medical support. Aisha stood beside the table reading names aloud while volunteers made calls. Gloria remained wrapped in the blue coat, helping identify familiar faces and likely places where women might have gone to escape the wind. Vanessa watched from near the stairs, her professional calm thinning with every completed call. You are bypassing established intake procedures, she said. Nathaniel looked at the notebook. Those procedures left. People outside in 25-degree weather. Emergency decisions require trained shelter staff. Then trained staff should have followed the published emergency policy. Vanessa turned toward Aisha. You are not qualified to coordinate housing placements. Aisha did not look away from the list. I am not placing anyone. I am asking what they need and connecting them with people who can help. Rachel nodded from across the table. Every placement is being reviewed by licensed outreach staff. Vanessa's argument had nowhere to go. By 12:40, 6 women had been located. 2 were at a subway station, 1 was sitting in an all-night diner, and 3 had reached another church nearly 2 miles away. Transportation was arranged through licensed car services. Each woman received the same question before anyone moved her. Where would you feel safest tonight? Nathaniel heard the wording repeated again and again. Not where can we put you. Not what will cost less. Where would you feel safest? The distinction changed everything. Gloria watched Aisha write down a woman's request for a room near a hospital where her medication could be replaced. You always did this, Gloria said softly. Aisha looked at her. Did what? Made room for people before anyone made room for you. Aisha lowered her eyes to the notebook. Nathaniel heard the sentence, but he did not step into it. Some truths did not belong to him simply because he was present. Vanessa received a telephone call and moved toward the far wall. Her voice dropped, but the room was quiet enough for Nathaniel to hear fragments. Board members, donor concern, media risk. When she returned, she addressed him directly. The foundation should issue a statement before inaccurate information spreads. Nathaniel's expression remained still. No statement leaves tonight. Silence may appear irresponsible. A polished statement before the women are safe would be irresponsible. The shelter's reputation affects future funding. Aisha closed the notebook. Its purpose should affect future funding. Vanessa looked at her with open irritation. This situation is more complicated than you understand. Gloria rose slowly from her chair. The coat hung heavily around her thin frame, but her voice was clear. I understood the locked door. The room went silent. Vanessa's gaze shifted away first. Nathaniel instructed his foundation counsel to preserve all shelter records, suspend Vanessa's control over intake decisions, and appoint temporary emergency oversight before morning. He did not terminate her on the spot. The audit would determine the full truth. But no woman would be turned away under Vanessa's authority that night. At 1:30, the final woman from the evening list was found inside a bus terminal. She chose a hotel room and asked for transportation without foundation markings. Her request was honored. Only then did Aisha sit down. Her hands trembled from cold and exhaustion. Nathaniel removed his overcoat and held it out. She looked at it, but did not take it. I can buy another coat tomorrow, he said. That is not the problem. I know. He lowered the coat. What is? Aisha looked toward Gloria, who was speaking with Rachel about the studio housing application. You saw one cold woman and wanted to solve one night. There are 19 names because the system expects people to disappear between reports. Nathaniel followed her gaze to the notebook. Then tell me what a real solution requires. An audit. Transparent intake records. No hidden fees. Independent complaints. People who have used shelters on the governing board. And you? I choose how much of this becomes my responsibility. Nathaniel nodded. Agreed. Aisha studied him, measuring whether the answer was another promise made under emotional pressure. Put it in writing, she said. For the first time that night, a faint respect entered his expression. By morning, outside, the snow continued falling, but every woman whose name had been written that evening now had somewhere she had chosen to go. Nathaniel had arrived believing help meant acting quickly. Aisha had shown him that real help began by asking who still had the right to decide. By 9 the next morning, Nathaniel's promise had become a 12-page emergency agreement reviewed by Foundation Counsel, Dr. Rachel Kim, and 2 representatives chosen by women who had used the shelter. Aisha read every line at the kitchen table of the Cross Estate before beginning her regular shift. The document suspended all informal fees, required written reasons for every denied intake, protected anonymous complaints, and guaranteed that no resident's name or image could be used for fundraising without consent. It also stated that Aisha's participation in the investigation was voluntary, paid separately from housekeeping, and limited by boundaries she could change at any time. Nathaniel waited across from her without speaking. The hotel placements end after 72 hours, she said. What happens if permanent options are not ready? Extensions will be available based on each woman's choice and the social worker's recommendation. Put that in the agreement. Nathaniel wrote the revision in the margin. The advisory board says 2 former residents. Aisha continued. It should be at least 3, with voting power. Agreed. And the shelter cannot require identification during severe weather if city policy allows emergency intake without it. Agreed. She turned another page. No public announcement before the women are informed. Agreed. Nathaniel had spent years signing contracts prepared by attorneys who expected him to skim the final pages. Aisha made him account for every sentence. He did not resent the delay. He understood now that speed had protected the foundation's image more often than the people it claimed to serve. At 11, an independent audit team arrived at the Eleanor Cross Women's Shelter. Vanessa Cole had been removed from intake authority but remained available for interviews. Nathaniel did not enter first. Gloria, Marlene, Rachel, and 2 women from the notebook walked through the front doors before him. Aisha followed in a borrowed winter jacket Marianne had offered without ceremony. The blue coat remained with Gloria. Inside the shelter, a brass plaque displayed Eleanor Cross's name beneath the words "No woman turned away." Gloria stopped before it. "They made us read that from the sidewalk," she said. Nathaniel looked at the locked intake office beyond the lobby. Not anymore. Auditors began, collecting receipt books, intake logs, donation envelopes, staffing schedules, and nightly capacity reports. The first discrepancy appeared within an hour. On 7 severe weather nights, reports sent to the foundation listed every available bed as occupied. Internal records showed empty beds had remained open after women without identification or cash were denied. A second file contained handwritten donation targets assigned to intake employees. Vanessa called them voluntary goals. One former employee described them as pressure. The money supported emergency supplies, Vanessa said during the interview. The auditor placed 3 bank summaries on the table. Then why was a portion transferred to a promotional events account? Vanessa looked toward Nathaniel. Fundraising maintains the shelter. Aisha sat beside Gloria, taking notes only after receiving permission from every woman whose statement she heard. A shelter cannot use closed doors to finance open house photographs, she said. Vanessa's expression tightened. You are a household employee, not a compliance officer. Nathaniel did not answer for Aisha. Gloria did. She is the reason anyone is reading this. The room fell quiet. By late afternoon, the auditors had identified enough inconsistencies to extend the review and recommend temporary management by a nonprofit partner experienced in emergency housing. Nathaniel approved the change, but he refused to select the resident representatives himself. Gloria nominated Marlene. Another woman nominated Gloria. Gloria tried to decline. I do not have a permanent address, she said. Rachel looked at her. That is exactly why your voice matters. Gloria accepted only after the agreement guaranteed transportation, compensation, and the right to step down without losing services. Aisha watched her sign. The hand beneath the blue sleeve trembled, but the signature remained clear. Outside, the snow had stopped. Nathaniel stood beside Aisha near the shelter entrance, while workers removed the old donation notice from the intake window. I bought you another coat, he said. She looked at him. Where is it? In the car. Then return it. He nodded without argument. What should I have done? Aisha glanced through the glass at Gloria seated with the new advisory group. Asked first. Nathaniel looked at the coat she had borrowed from Marianne. Do you need one? Yes. May I replace it? Aisha considered the question. You may pay me for the investigation hours. I will buy my own. Nathaniel accepted the answer. He had followed her because he believed generosity could be measured by what someone gave. By evening, he understood that dignity was measured by what they were still allowed to choose. For the next 4 days, Aisha divided her time between the Cross estate and the shelter review, recording every investigation hour separately as the agreement required. She used part of her first payment to buy a practical charcoal winter coat from a department store near the Bronx. It was warm, waterproof, and chosen by her alone. When Marianne complimented it, Aisha smiled and said, It has deep pockets. The answer sounded ordinary, which was exactly what she wanted. At the shelter, the independent team interviewed former residents, employees, volunteers, and outreach workers. The findings grew more serious with each day. Informal fees had been collected for nearly a year. Some payments were deposited correctly, while others were moved through accounts labeled donor engagement and community events. Intake workers had been pressured to prioritize women who could provide identification, complete forms quickly, or appear presentable during sponsor visits. No written policy authorized those choices, but staff members understood what Vanessa rewarded. The result was a shelter that looked efficient in reports because the most complicated cases disappeared before they became statistics. Gloria attended every advisory meeting in the blue coat. At first, she spoke only when someone asked her directly. By the fourth meeting, she had begun correcting the language in the proposed intake policy. "Do not write difficult client," she said, drawing a line through the phrase. "Write person needing additional support." The attorney beside her revised it without argument. Marlene added a requirement that every denial receive immediate review by someone not involved in the original decision. Rachel proposed transportation assistance for women redirected after dark. Aisha insisted that complaint forms be available without identification and in multiple languages. Nathaniel sat near the end of the table, listening while the institution bearing his family name was rebuilt by people it had once excluded. Vanessa attended with counsel and continued defending the old system as financially necessary. "Unrestricted access creates costs the foundation never agreed to cover," she said during the final interview. Nathaniel looked at the annual reports. The foundation was told unrestricted emergency access already existed. The language reflected our mission. It did not reflect your doors. Vanessa's counsel requested a pause, but the auditors continued with documented questions. The final preliminary report concluded that shelter leadership had misrepresented severe weather access, collected unauthorized payments, and used incomplete reporting to protect funding. It recommended removal of the existing executive management, reimbursement of documented fees, and long-term oversight by an independent nonprofit board. Nathaniel accepted every recommendation. Vanessa's employment was terminated through formal process, and the findings were referred to the appropriate city and charitable oversight offices. He issued no triumphant announcement. The women whose names filled the notebook were informed before donors received any statement. Refunds were offered privately, with no requirement that recipients sign releases or appear in promotional materials. Gloria received her $25 in an envelope, but she did not open it. "Keep it for the advisory transportation fund," she said. The administrator shook her head. "It belongs to you." Gloria considered the answer, then placed the money in her purse. Later, she donated the same amount through the new transparent system and requested a receipt. "Choice matters both directions," she told Aisha. 2 weeks after the first night, Gloria was offered 3 housing options. She rejected the room far from Tessa's school, declined a shared apartment with strict visiting limits, and selected a small supportive studio in Upper Manhattan near a clinic and bus line. Nathaniel did not visit the apartment before she chose it. He saw photographs only after Gloria signed the lease herself. Tessa arrived that Saturday carrying 2 grocery bags and a framed family picture. Aisha helped unpack dishes while Gloria hung the blue coat beside the door. The repaired sleeve caught the afternoon light. "You should take it back," Gloria said. Aisha touched the fabric but left it on the hook. "Not yet. It was your mother's gift. She gave it to keep me warm." Aisha looked around the small studio, at Tessa arranging books on a shelf and Gloria standing in a home she had chosen. "It is still doing that." Nathaniel waited downstairs in the car because Gloria had invited Aisha and Tessa, not him. When Aisha finally came outside, she wore her new charcoal coat and carried no borrowed bag. Nathaniel stepped onto the sidewalk. "Is she settled?" "She is beginning." "And the blue coat?" "Still hers." He nodded. Aisha looked toward the building, then back at him. "You followed me because you thought I had taken something from you." Nathaniel did not look away. "Yes." "What did you find?" He glanced at the shelter report resting unopened in the car. "That the people taking the most were the ones sending me reports about generosity." Aisha held his gaze for a quiet moment. Then she walked toward the subway, warm in a coat she had chosen and paid for herself, while behind her the man who once doubted her honesty began rebuilding every promise that carried his name. 1 month later, the Eleanor Cross Women's Shelter reopened under independent management with a new intake desk, transparent capacity board, and a policy requiring every denied admission to receive immediate review. The brass plaque bearing Nathaniel's mother's name remained in the lobby, but the words beneath it had changed. Instead of "No woman turned away," the new inscription read, "Every woman heard, every decision accountable." Gloria attended the reopening as an advisory board member, wearing the blue coat over a burgundy dress Tessa had helped her choose. She refused a reserved seat in the front row and sat beside women who had once waited outside the locked doors. Aisha stood near the back in her charcoal coat, holding a folder of updated procedures she had reviewed the night before. Nathaniel arrived without press, photographers, or foundation banners. He had learned that visibility could turn another person's survival into evidence of his generosity. The opening began with no speech from him. Marlene explained the new complaint process. Rachel described medical and housing partnerships. Gloria spoke about the difference between being offered help and being allowed to choose it. "A door is not open," she said, "if someone on the other side decides you are too complicated to enter." The room became still. Nathaniel listened from the second row. When his turn came, he stood only long enough to acknowledge the foundation's failure. "Our reports were polished," he said. "Our oversight was not. The people most affected by the shelter will now have voting power over how it operates." He did not ask for forgiveness. He announced the changes, named the independent monitors, and sat down. Afterward, Aisha joined Gloria near the intake desk. A clear plastic holder contained free transit cards, multilingual forms, and a notice stating that donations were never required for admission. Gloria touched the notice with one finger. "They should put this outside too." Aisha smiled. "Already ordered." Nathaniel approached but stopped several feet away. "The board approved the transportation fund," he said. Gloria looked at him. "With resident control? 3 resident representatives must approve every policy change. Then it might last." Her caution no longer offended him. It was the kind of accountability his foundation had avoided for years. A volunteer entered carrying a small package addressed to Aisha. Inside was the blue coat, freshly cleaned, the torn lining repaired with careful stitches. Aisha looked toward Gloria. "I thought you were keeping it." Gloria folded her arms. "I was, until I found something warmer." Tessa appeared from behind the intake desk, holding a red wool coat and laughing. She chose it herself and argued with the sales clerk about the pockets. Gloria lifted her chin. "Deep pockets matter." Aisha ran her fingers along the familiar blue sleeve. The repair matched the stitching her mother had made years earlier. Inside the pocket, she found a folded note. "You gave me warmth when I had forgotten I still mattered. Then you made them see us." Aisha pressed the paper between both hands. Nathaniel turned slightly toward the lobby windows, giving her privacy without leaving. She read the message again, then called his name. He looked back. "You can come closer," she said. Nathaniel approached slowly. Aisha held up the note. "She says I made them see. She is right. You changed the funding. Because you showed me where not to look away." Gloria watched them from beside the desk. "Do not give him too much credit," she said. "He still followed you because he thought you were stealing." Nathaniel accepted the reminder. "Also true." Aisha smiled for the first time without caution. She put on the blue coat. It still fit, though the repaired lining felt stronger than before. Outside, the afternoon air was cold but clear. Women entered through the shelter doors without being asked for cash, identification, gratitude, or a story suitable for donors. Nathaniel had followed Aisha expecting to uncover a secret. What he discovered was that the greatest deception had been written into reports carrying his own family name, while the truth walked through snow in a thin cardigan and gave away its only coat. In the weeks that followed, the shelter's new policies faced the test every reform eventually meets. Ordinary days without cameras, speeches, or public attention. Aisha returned to her work at the Cross Estate, but 2 evenings each week she reviewed anonymized intake reports with Gloria, Marlene, and Rachel. The records no longer reduced women to numbers. Each denial required a written reason, a second review, and a documented alternative offered with the applicant's consent. Complaints could be submitted without identification. Emergency transportation remained available after dark. Most importantly, the advisory board received the same data as the foundation. Nothing could be polished before reaching the people responsible for oversight. Nathaniel attended only the monthly governance meeting. He had learned that his presence could change how freely others spoke. During the first session, he sat near the end of the table and listened while Gloria questioned why the shelter's meal budget allowed less than $6 per resident each day. The new director explained rising costs. Gloria opened a grocery advertisement and showed that several local stores offered better prices through community partnerships. Then ask them, she said. Do not tell women there is no money until you have looked where they shop. The board approved a pilot purchasing program. A month later, food quality improved without increasing the budget. Nathaniel watched the result with quiet respect. Gloria had once been treated as someone unable to manage her own life. Now she was correcting the financial assumptions of an institution that had denied her a bed. Aisha's own life began changing in smaller ways. She stopped taking every available housekeeping shift and used the investigation payments to build an emergency savings account. She bought groceries without calculating which meal she could skip. When Tessa needed application fees for community college, Aisha helped, but she did not empty her account. Gloria contributed from a paid advisory stipend, and Tessa accepted only after all three women agreed on a budget. Their love no longer required one person to disappear so the others could survive. Nathaniel noticed the difference one cold evening when Aisha finished work and buttoned the blue coat before leaving. Your train is delayed, he said, looking at the weather alert on his phone. I saw. Would you like the driver to take you home? Aisha studied him. Months earlier, he would have instructed the car to wait without asking. Yes, she said. Tonight, I would. Nathaniel nodded and made the arrangement. The answer mattered because it belonged to her. Before she left, Marian handed Aisha a sealed envelope from the foundation office. Inside was a letter confirming that the independent board had approved a part-time paid position for her as Community Accountability Coordinator. The role included reviewing access complaints, training intake volunteers, and reporting directly to the resident-led committee. Nathaniel's signature did not appear on the offer. Gloria, Marlene, and Rachel had recommended her through the formal process. Aisha found Nathaniel in the library reading a logistics report. Did you know about this? She asked. He looked at the envelope. I knew the position was being created. I did not know whom they selected. You did not interfere? I was not invited to. Aisha smiled faintly. That must have been difficult. Extremely. The humor passed between them lightly, but the respect beneath it had taken months to build. She accepted the position the following morning after negotiating hours that would not conflict with her estate work. Later that week, she stood at the shelter intake desk training new volunteers. The blue coat hung on a hook behind her, no longer a symbol of what she had lost, but of what had returned stronger. A woman entered carrying 2 plastic bags and asked whether she needed cash for a bed. Aisha looked toward the clear policy posted beside the door. No, she said. You only need to tell us what would make you feel safe tonight. Gloria watched from the advisory office as the woman sat down. Nathaniel stood outside beneath the evening light, waiting for the meeting he had been invited to attend. He did not enter until Aisha opened the door and called him inside. The first time he followed her, suspicion had led the way. Now he waited because respect had taught him that every door belonged first to the people already behind it. 6 months later, the first winter storm of the season covered Upper Manhattan in white, but no woman stood outside the Eleanor Cross Women's Shelter waiting for someone to decide whether she deserved warmth. The capacity board in the lobby showed every available bed, every occupied room, and every emergency placement arranged through partner hotels. Intake forms were offered in 4 languages. Transit cards, clean clothing, medical referrals, and complaint envelopes rested beside the front desk, without foundation logos or donation requests. Aisha arrived before sunset, wearing the repaired blue coat and carrying the quarterly accountability report beneath one arm. Her position had expanded from part-time review work to a permanent role overseeing access standards across 3 shelters supported by the Cross Foundation. She had accepted only after the resident-led committee approved the job description, compensation, and reporting structure. She still worked 2 mornings each week at the Cross estate because she wanted the transition to happen on her terms, not because anyone expected her to remain in service. Gloria sat in the advisory office reviewing severe weather plans with Marlene and Rachel. Her red coat hung behind the door, while the old blue coat remained on Aisha's shoulders. The buses are slowing down, Gloria said. We need transportation staged before the temperature drops further. Aisha checked the report. 2 licensed car services are available, and the hotel partner confirmed 12 emergency rooms. Gloria nodded. Good. Call the outreach team near the station before anyone is stranded. Nathaniel arrived 10 minutes later carrying no cameras, prepared remarks, or donor guests. He waited in the lobby until Aisha finished speaking with a woman who had been referred from a hospital without identification. The new intake worker did not turn her away. She offered a seat, warm tea, and an emergency review. Nathaniel watched quietly as the policy worked without his intervention. That was the measure that mattered now. Aisha approached him after the woman had chosen a temporary room near her clinic. "The governance meeting is ready," she said. Nathaniel glanced at the blue coat. Gloria finally returned it. She said the red one has better pockets. A serious standard. The highest. They entered the conference room together, but Nathaniel did not take the chair at the head of the table. That seat belonged to Gloria, elected by the advisory board for a one-year term. She opened the meeting by reviewing the storm plan, then turned to Nathaniel. "The foundation wants to expand the shelter model to 2 more neighborhoods," she said. "But the resident boards must be established before the buildings open." "Agreed," he replied. "And no family name on the wall until local members approve it." "Agreed." Aisha watched him answer without resistance. The man who once believed his money gave him the clearest view had learned that funding a door did not mean he understood who was being kept outside it. After the meeting, the shelter received a call about an older woman near the same station where Nathaniel had first seen Aisha remove her coat. Aisha prepared to join the outreach team, but Gloria stopped her. "You do not have to carry every emergency yourself." Aisha looked toward the falling snow beyond the window. For years, giving everything had felt like the only proof of love she trusted. "Then come with me," she said. Gloria smiled. "That I can do." Nathaniel offered transportation, and this time both women accepted. The car stopped near the station at 10:18, almost exactly 6 months after the night he had followed Aisha through the snow. They found the woman beneath the same weak streetlight, but the outcome was different now. A trained outreach worker asked what she needed. Gloria explained her options. Aisha offered a warm scarf, not the coat from her own shoulders. Nathaniel stood several steps away, holding the car door open only after the woman chose to enter. No one demanded gratitude. No one decided for her. As the car moved toward the shelter, Aisha looked through the window at the streets where she had once walked in a thin cardigan. "You followed me because you doubted me," she said. Nathaniel met her eyes. "Yes. And now?" He looked toward Gloria and the woman seated safely beside her. "Now I follow the truth wherever it leads, especially when it points back at me." Aisha rested one hand over the repaired sleeve of her mother's coat. He had once believed generosity meant giving enough to solve another person's life. She had taught him that dignity began when help left room for choice. And that winter, every door carrying the cross name finally opened from both sides.